Hello and welcome to the In a Nutshell podcast with myself, Andrew Miles Davis, and my co-host Chris Branch. This is the daily 10-minute podcast where we take out all of the techie talk around generative AI and focus on what the everyday person, content creator, and marketer wants to hear. Now, we've only got 10 minutes, so we can only talk about one particular subject. And today we're going to talk about a subject that we both love, and that is combat sports. Now, it's going to be a mixture of boxing and UFC, but what we really going to discuss is, do we think AI should be used when it comes to judging? Because if you look at what's been happening in the world, well, both, especially boxing, I would say boxing more than UFC, is that some of the decisions that you're getting by judges is like, like mind blowing. It's like, how did you come up with that? And this is not something that's been going on for, just recently. This has been going on for a while. Now, some people may argue the reason the judges is like making those decisions is because they're in someone's pocket. Some people might argue the judge doesn't know what they're talking about. But regardless, it's, do we think AI can be more beneficial, or do we think, you know what, yeah, it probably could help, but actually let's not go down the route of football and VAR? So what do you think, Chris? Just initially, your initial thoughts.
Well, boxing and UFC have got terrible judging right now. And a lot of the pro fighters on the UFC, which is more the sport I follow, say that they are just totally unaware of the actual combat sport. Like they're not ex-pros. They're not people that even give a crap, like they're just randomly picked judges by a committee, and that these people don't know when a hard punch lands and when a block incurs, and they're not thinking about like takedown time. And the problem with UFC compared to boxing is there's so many variables, like you could have someone on the ground, you could pin them, but you don't actually do any damage. And then they give them like a really high score because they got them to the ground, but they did nothing with it. And so, I think AI definitely could be useful in both understanding how hard a punch landed, whether it landed, using like 360 cameras and data to know, oh, that actually was a sneaky little left hook that got in there, in the clinch. The judges might not have seen it because of the angle that they were sitting at the stuff. So instantly I'm thinking, yes. But you're right, the VAR thing is an issue, and it stops stuff and it makes stuff, really slow and boring for the people watching it. They have to wait 8 minutes for the VAR to make a decision about, whether it was a offside or not. And sometimes, like when I watched the Arsenal one, there was like 3 different contentions. It was like the first ball, the second ball, and then the header in. And you're we have to wait for 20 minutes soon, if that's going to be the case.
And you can't do that in combat sport because
no.
Like with combat sport, let's say for example, let's say you got that AI. When does the AI give the judges the information? Is it at the end of the round where you've only got a very short space of time to get that information in? Is it at the end of the fight? Also, will you then tell the coaches? Because with boxing, it's very much like, well, hold on, or UFC, I'm down by a round or I'm down by 2 rounds. That's going to dictate how I go out the next round, because there's been so many times where boxers think that they're winning, but they're losing, or they think that they're losing and they're winning. And that actually, because the whole point of AI in sport is to make it fair. That's kind of what it is. But also the big part of sport is to how can we make it more exciting? If boxers knew that they were down by, let's say, 2 rounds, or UFC fighters knew they were down by a round, then they would go into the next round all out attack, which makes it more exciting.
Yeah.
So this is where it's going to cause a potential gray area. And the reason why I say that is because it looks like it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. Because there is some form of, you see it in cricket, you see it in tennis, which I think they probably have it the best. You even see it in American football to an extent. Obviously, with football, now you see it with VAR. But the problem, as we were saying before, is that with VAR, it's not the technology that's the issue. It's the way people interpret the law or the rules. And that is going to be an issue when it comes to boxing and UFC as well.
Yeah, and it's weird because all of those examples you just said, they don't have a definitive ending like UFC or boxing. You know, for example, tennis will always be played out to every possible point. You know, you
Yeah.
can win faster or slower, but you're always going to have to play out all of the points. Whereas UFC can end in one punch, and so
Yeah.
can boxing. You know, like the only way I was thinking about that is because you're right. Like maybe AI shouldn't be giving the judges per round the actual like what's happened, but if it does go to the judging cards at the end and the match is finished with a draw, basically, you know, like whereby no one's able to knock out the other person or submit them, or in the UFC case or whatever, then the AI should be taken into account, because then it might be less disruptive than VAR, where it's like in the middle of a game, you need to pause and wait 20 minutes. And,
Yeah.
you know, that really, for the live audience and for the viewing audience, is a complete travesty to use
Yeah.
technology.
But also the fighters as well, because the fighters, you can't wait 10 minutes for that, because you're gonna cool down. Then you need to be staying warm.
That's
Your
right.
muscles need to be warm, and it's not like where football or other sports where it's not as dangerous.
Mhm.
You know, where
Oh,
these
actually,
days,
I've just thought of one AI use case in the rounds is a crotch shot. You know, because they have to pause if you have a crotch shot, and a lot of fighters fake it. You know, they'll get kicked in the belly or in the liver, and then they'll just want to take that 5-minute break. And so
yeah.
AI could definitely determine, that hit the crotch.
Yeah, that's a good use. That is a very good use. I think something that you also said earlier on, and it's a famous saying in any combat sport, and that styles make fights.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are very much aggressive fighters. Some people are very much the counter fighters.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at jiu-jitsu, you know, the top people, it doesn't matter if they're on the top or on the bottom. If they're in the bottom, they can still submit someone. If they're in the top, they still can submit someone. Some people actually fight better off their back.
Yeah.
And this is where, at the moment, if you use human judges, they might see it. Well, it seems like a lot of them see it through their eyes. So, for example, I see like a more aggressive fighter will win a round, but that doesn't mean that they're actually landing punches. They're just aggressive moving forward, where the other fighter is being a bit more strategic. They might say, I want you to come on to me because I'm going to counter you with whatever shot it may be. So they have to wait for that person to throw before they can counter. And you're not going to counter every single punch. Sometimes, like the famous Muhammad Ali Foreman fight, again, I just want you to punch yourself out, because when you're tired, then I'm going to attack. So there's a lot of strategy that goes into it. But then again, you never know. The AIs are smart enough to kind of work. They might be able to work that out. So that's the thing. It's like, okay, well, we're going to consider a strategic, the strategy behind it, an aggressive fighter, a counter fighter, a more passive fighter. You know, what is a hard shot versus what is a soft shot? What is a below the belt shot versus a setup shot? So
How long
all
do
of
they
these
stay
things.
in the middle of the ring, and were they on the back foot or on the front foot? You know, there's so many variables. You're right, thinking about it. But I think a lot of them are trying to be taken into account by the judges badly right now. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
counter punchers are some of the most famous, like Conor McGregor and the recent champion Sean O'Malley. You know, these guys are known counter punchers, and they're so dangerous. And
yeah,
obviously, you would probably think that a judge right now would show more like willingness to the aggressor rather than the counterpuncher,
yeah,
because they are looking like they're, taking advantage or, moving forward. But
yeah.
that's not necessarily like a thing you should score highly.
Mm,
It might be reckless moving forward. It might be, not landing any punches. And just because you're moving forward and keeping the center of the ring doesn't mean you should actually be getting points.
exactly,
It's a
exactly.
very I guess it's like music or art or marketing. It's so
It's
in the eye
also
of the beholder.
in the eye of the beholder, and it's also quite primitive way to look at it. You know, it's like someone's like, oh, this person's a really good boxer because they punch hard. Yeah, strength or power is only relevant if it has a home. You know, if
Yeah,
you can't land a punch on that person, then you can have all the power you like. You know,
exactly.
and that's the thing when it comes to that. And some people, they will just judge based off of how fast this person is or how powerful. They kind of miss the strategy of these particular sports. Because let's be honest, they're like chess if you really break
Yeah,
down how you do it. But
definitely.
what I would also say is this, and in a nutshell, if we do go down the AI route and it goes like football, what's happened with football and VAR is that the toothpaste is out of the tub. Once it happens, you have to then go fully in. So when it comes to AI in sport, and in this case, combat sport, again, sometimes be careful what you wish for.
Hmm.